Well, let me first start with this. I do think the Russ can't win chant or the Russ can't win saying that everybody puts out there. I think it's overstated because Russell Westbrook has played in an NBA Finals. He's played in 4 Western Conference Finals. So he's actually done a lot of winning in this league. He's won more than Steve Nash. All right, he just hasn't been able to win the championship, which obviously a lot of great players haven't been able to win the championship. So I think it's overstated. But what would a title do for him? It would be huge, assuming he's able to, it's a real big 3. If he goes there, he's just a role player, and it's really all about AD and LeBron, then it won't do much for his legacy. Kind of like Jason Kidd winning it in Dallas or something like that. But if it's a real big 3 and Russ is really contributing, then this would be massive for his legacy. I've always kind of lumped him in with Allen Iverson and to a lesser degree Pistol Pete Maravich. Great, iconic, legendary players that people will be talking about decades from now for their contribution to the game. But guys that never won it all and could be difficult to play with because of their style of play. If he wins this championship, all that pretty much goes out of the window. And you say, it goes from, man, Russell Westbrook, what a great individual player, what a great athlete, what a great spectacle he was. It goes from that to Russell Westbrook, what a great player, period.
Yep.
All right, now there's no more buts, but he couldn't win, but he was hard to play with. It just goes to, man, this dude was one of the greatest players we've ever seen.
All right, so that's interesting, Broussard, because I have the opposite take, but you're swaying me a little bit. So one about the you can't win with Russ, that feels like it just bubbled up once he started to not make it, win the championship. I think it actually started when Durant left Oklahoma City. When you had an all-time great player say, you know what, I'm going to go win with that team because I can't win with you. It's sort of a burden that Russ has had to carry and he hasn't been able to shake. At the same time, I put him in also, like you mentioned, Pistol Pete and Iverson. I was also going to mention Iverson. I'm going to take it out of just basketball. What do you think about one entertainment, one sports? I think like Christopher Walken and Barry Sanders, which are both intense and do things so unique. They're sort of one-of-one individual personalities that if Christopher Walken won an Academy Award, I don't think anyone would be like, I think more highly of him. I think you would still think he was just amazing. And if Barry Sanders won a Super Bowl, I don't know, be like, I think differently of him now. To me, I feel like they're swimming in their own lane, Broussard, and that if Russ wins or does not win, he will still be, the first line of his Wikipedia is still all the triple doubles. It's still about the intensity. It's still about his ferocious competitiveness. I don't think it leads with NBA champion, how we do with Garnett. You know what I mean? I still think it's the triple doubles are the main thing. So I think the Pistol Pete thing, I still have him in that category of great individual performer. Whether or not you win a title, your legacy is already in stone.
Well, he's certainly a unique player. I mean, I don't really know where to put him. Do we rank him with the point guards? Do we rank him with the shooting guards?
Yeah.
He's just a great player. All right, so I'm with you there, Wiles. But winning is so emphasized now in the NBA. I mean, it's all about did you get a ring that I do think it'll be huge for him. With Oscar Robertson, you're right. The greatest part of Oscar's legacy is he averaged a triple-double. But we also can at least say he did win a championship. If Oscar had never won a championship, I think his legacy would be different, even though that's the second paragraph and not the first. As far as Barry Sanders, here's the thing with Barry. Winning for running backs, there have been tons of great running backs. Earl Campbell, O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson, who never won a championship. So Walter Payton, by the time he won it, he was at the end of his career. So I think it's different for running backs than it is for the NBA, where it is all about did you get a ring.
Right. All right, look, I want to go back to what Jenna first talked about. I don't want to gloss over that because it's important. With Jenna, what you said was this big three met at LeBron's house. I'm assuming that it's the house that we saw in Space Jam 2, and they probably met on that basketball court, which was the opening scene. So they all got together at LeBron's estate. They got on that basketball court, and they sat down, and they said they walked away. Yeah, it was awesome this past weekend. And they walked away from that meeting, and they said, okay, we're checking our egos. Well, the last time we talked about this was when when you inserted James Harden into the Brooklyn Nets discussion and the equation, and we all said the same thing. This is a chemistry experiment. How is this going to work? I was one that said they had to sit down. Nobody talked about that big three sitting down. Said, look, for something like this to happen, those guys got to sit down and before the deal get done and say, okay, how do we get this done? How are we going to play? I felt like, and there was a couple people, Chris, you were one that's like, look, it can work. You got KD. KD's a guy. He can figure it out. He did it in Golden State. Right. He doesn't need to dominate the ball. There's so many different ways he can get open. There's so many different ways he can get his shot, right? And then you got James Harden. James Harden was the one. James Harden was the one who was like, man, like, how is he going to fit? And he was the one that actually sacrificed, and he was the one that he was probably the main reason why it ended up working out. Now, They only played 8 games, but when they did, they averaged 75 points a game, and people are like, oh, so they can win. Oh, they probably are the favorites, but then the health got involved, the hamstring goes, the ankle goes, and now you know the rest of the story. Giannis and the Bucks goes on to win it. Now, when you think about this, Wilds, here's where I'm off. I'm glad that they sat down and talked. I'm glad that they checked their egos. But what I just don't believe is, I don't believe they have. I think this is a bad mixture of this talent. Like Westbrook is a guy in Houston that tried to fit in, and it didn't work with James Harden. Why? Because he needs the ball, and we know. Got LeBron James on the other side. He needs the ball. So who's actually going to sacrifice? And here's the thing. Westbrook, it's not about like, okay, yeah, he might say, all right, I don't need the ball. But I don't think he's good when he doesn't have the ball in his hand. That's why I go back to Houston, because he tried that and he wasn't himself. And then when he was himself and he was ball dominant again, he went back to averaging a triple-double. So who is going to be that guy that makes that who can make this sacrifice and will make this sacrifice is my question.
Yeah, so I get it that we had the similar conversation about the Nets, like who's going to check their egos. I don't think Russ is an ego thing at all. Not one bit. I just think that Russ is such a unique player. It's like having, a heavy metal singer, a superstar who's used to playing arenas. And they're like, hey, I need you to join this, foursome group. And like, yeah, but I'm going to rock. When the music comes on, I'm going to grab the microphone and I'm going to rock it. And like, oh, okay, but you kind of got to like, no, I'm going to rock the stadium. I'm going to tear the place down. Like, that's what it's going to be. It's not like, are you going to share the ball? Like, it's just not how he plays. It's not what makes him special. So if Frank Vogel and LeBron sort of have a plan, they better have a plan like what they did in Houston, where you clear Capella out and let Russ do his thing. And because he's not going to sit out there and be sort of like, the sidecar to James Harden. You got to clear Capella out, let him drive more, start playing them, off against each other. So I don't know if that works. If you have AD sitting out on the perimeter and LeBron sitting out on the perimeter, and let Russ drive, because that was how he's most effective in Houston, Broussard.
Well, here's the thing. The reason why it could work in Brooklyn is because all 3 of those guys can shoot. That's it. And like I said with the Lakers, none of them can really shoot. LeBron's a good shooter. AD and Russ not a good shooter. AD's a so-so for a big man. All right, so that's the difference. What's the floor spacing going to look like? It's great that they came together and talked, and I agree with you, Wiles. It's not an ego thing. Russ is willing to do it. He deferred to James Harden, but their games just didn't complement each other. And I don't think these 3 guys' games complement each other. Remember, LeBron was working out with Derrick Rose. And not that he's Russell Westbrook at this point, but they worked out together in L.A. too. They thought they'd come together, and we got all this talent. Remember Isaiah Thomas when he was coming off the almost MVP year in Boston? He goes to Cleveland, and it doesn't fit because he wasn't a shooter. He wasn't a catch-and-shoot guy, and that's what LeBron needs. Look, You can't just take the best and throw them together if their skills don't complement each other. Rakim, one of the best rappers ever, right? Dr. Dre, one of the best producers ever. They tried to work it out. They couldn't. You would think they'd be able to make Grammy Award-winning music if that's the right award. Right. But they couldn't because it just wasn't any chemistry.
Neil Diamond
and
and Barbra Streisand.
Right now,
yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Remember that.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.